Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome. We are Ohio STC is happy to present with UX Akron tonight, and I especially thank Tricia for her contribution for Ohio STC. Ohio STC welcomes anybody who writes for an audience for a living. We offer guidelines. We're mostly concentrate on technical communication, but all authors are welcome. So keep us in mind. And thank you and welcome.
Very good. And Paulette is the president of the Ohio STC chapter.
Thank you for that, Trish. Guess I should start.
Who are you? Okay. And I'd like to ask Melanie to say a few words as well.
Well, glad to be here and welcome to everybody joining tonight. So I'm Melanie Bazzelli, president of UX Akron, and we are a user experience community serving Northeast Ohio, covering the Cleveland area to Akron, Canton, Youngstown, and Kent. And anyone is welcome at UX Akron, from students and those that are new to the UX disciplines, also seasoned professionals. So if you have an interest in UX, welcome. We'd love to have you at our various meetings that we run throughout the year. And we do have a signature event coming up that's World Information Architecture Day. This is an in-person full-day event happening on Friday, March 1st. So that's our next event, and you can visit uxakron.com. We have a blog post all about it. So excited for that next one coming up. And for tonight's meeting, Tricia Speyer and Dan Minder, who is a UX Akron board member, are here to talk about swapping skills, UX pros, and technical communicators. So let me turn it over to Tricia now to talk a little bit about that topic.
But I welcome everyone from all around the world. It is great to see you here. The title of this presentation this evening is Swapping Skills, and we do have audience members from both the UX profession and technical communicators, as well as people who are interested in either profession with us this evening. So we are happy to have you here. My name is Tricia Speyer. I've been a technical communicator at a company called Presco Technology in Solon, Ohio for 27.5 years. I have achieved my certification in technical communication. I've also achieved or have been bestowed the fellow honor in the Society for Technical Communication, which is the oldest profession that deals with technical communication and the advancement of that profession. I've been doing graphics since 1993. I had to put that in there, just fun. I belong to Toastmasters. I have my Distinguished Toastmaster Award, and I'm a past district director for District 10 Toastmasters. Toastmasters is where I know Dan from. We've worked on a lot of technical and very intense projects over the last several years. So it's been fun working with Dan. And if and when I ever have free time, I like to do photography and video editing and designing websites and so forth. But I also like to have a little bit of fun. Anybody who knows me knows my friend Monty. Monty says hello to everybody in the audience. This is Monty. He allows my husband and me to travel everywhere with him. I will now allow Dan to introduce himself.
Hi, folks. I'm Dan Minder. And yes, like Tricia said, we've known each other since about 2019, and we've had a lot of really intense projects worked on together. It's been a heck of. It's right back at you, Tricia. It's been time well spent, all of it. And I'm a computer network technician from Stark State College. So I don't work in UX directly, but what I found out through the years is that I do enjoy technology and working with it. What I'm really passionate about and really what gets me motivated is making things work for end users and making them satisfied. And it kind of drives the people I work with nuts a bit. But that's kind of that's my journey. This is kind of how I found out myself here. I'm a graduate from Kent State University. I have a Master of Science in Information Architecture and Knowledge Management. but it's just called the User Experience Master of Science. I think they've renamed the program. I'm also UX background board member, and I'm also have my Distinguished Toastmaster Award. It's the highest educational award that you can get with that organization. And I'll pass it back to Tricia.
Thanks, Dan. So if you have seen the promotion or the Ohio STC website, we only listed a couple of things in terms of the agenda on here, but we'll be covering sort of a broad umbrella of these items. So we will be talking about the similarities and differences between technical communicators and UX professionals. And I did see in the registration, several people had mentioned that as what they wanted to learn this evening. So we'll definitely be talking about that. I like to say that I translate engineering into English, and I'm allowed to say that because I have an engineering degree. So that's what I do for a living, is translating engineering into English. I'll get into that in a little bit. We'll also be talking briefly about working with subject matter experts. And then Dan will be talking about conducting usability tests for your documentation. So you may see, and you may notice that UX professionals and technical communicators do have many overlapping skills, but tonight we'll help you distinguish between them. So first of all, anybody who's here who is not already a technical communicator, I'd like to talk about what is technical communication. And I'm going to go to that URL that I have listed there. So I am on the stc.org site. So STC is, if you hear me saying that abbreviation, it is the Society for Technical Communication. But there is a page on here that talks about what technical communication is in terms of how the society helps us. And it mentions technical communication is communicating about technical or specialized topics. Maybe you're a software writer, you write about how software works or medical procedures. Not me, because I would faint if I'm talking about medical stuff, or environmental regulations. My job, I'm a department of one, and I write about high-speed vision inspection systems. So it's technical. I had to have an electrical engineering degree to get this particular position because we needed to learn electronics, but I used that to kind of translate that into plain English. But technical communicators, it could be defined as using technology, so that can be considered technical communication. If you write for some instructions for web pages, help files, social media, providing instructions about how to do something, regardless of how technical the task is. So maybe you write about how to use a broom and you write that on a website. That would be technical communication. So it doesn't always have to be electronics or software or hardware or whatever it is. Technical communication is either how to use something or you're providing instructions in a technical manner. I'm just going to scroll down. I'm not going to read the entire page, but just for your information, people who belong to STC may be technical writers. There are still people who do indexing, information architects, instructional designers, technical illustrators, people who do translations and localizations. Here we have usability professionals, visual designers, we have web designers and developers. We have several academic members, teachers and researchers of technical communication, and of course, trainers and e-learning developers. So there's quite a variety of people who belong to STC and who do technical communication. So that is what technical communication is. Now I'd like to pass it over to Dan, who can talk about what user experience is.
Okay, thanks, Tricia. The user experience design or user experience, this is the definition that I've gotten off the Nielsen Norman Group website. And it's pretty simple. User experience encompasses all aspects of the end user's interaction with the companies, its services, and its products. So all aspects of it. How does it look? How does it feel? Is it satisfying to use? Can we understand it? Will it help us solve our problems? Pretty much all of those things.
Next.
Yep.
So there's,
Okay,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. I could just switch to the next slide.
oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so what we have here is, here's one way to look at UX, and this is this umbrella. And here you'll see there are all these different fields that kind of fall under the UX umbrella as we see it, under the user experience umbrella. We have our user researchers, business analysts. Just below that, we have our information architects, Tricia talked about, interaction designers. And we were discussing this last night, and we noticed that technical communicators were not in here, so we discussed where we'd put it. And if you could please press your space bar one more time, Tricia. Yep, here we go. So here's we discussed, and it looks like Melanie suggested it'd be under business analyst and also part of content strategy maybe. And then also Melanie noticed missing under the umbrella was accessibility as well. So we threw that under there too, accessibility design. Okay. Next slide, please.
Yep. Okay. So one of the resources, and we can provide the link to this presentation, and it's got a URL at the very end. And one of the resources is from a lady named Jenny Reddish, who is a very popular speaker and leader for the Society for Technical Communication, but she also has written books on usability and so forth. So she's in both worlds essentially. And part of that white paper that we have a link to talks about skills that technical communicators have that help usability pros. And these skills are collaboration skills. So technical communicators will work a lot with subject matter experts or people. In my experience, I work with field service people, salespeople, marketing people, whoever would be a good resource for the end user, whoever's going to be reading the manuals and the information that we create. So we need to collaborate with a wide range of people, multidisciplinary teams. As I said, those different departments that we might work with in our world, we communicate clearly. So when we are writing manuals, when we're writing our web sites, when we're writing our instructions and so forth, we have to communicate it clearly and making sure that whoever's reading it is able to understand that. We also pride ourselves on clarifying the complex. And I have an example following this slide. Technical communicators quickly adapt to change. So perhaps a company gets bought by someone else. Maybe a technical communicator has been using a certain software program for several years, and all of a sudden she has to learn a brand new one. We're constantly learning new skills, new tools, new information that we have to write about, so we are able to quickly adapt. So this second to last bullet here, clarifying the complex, is the part that I wanted to focus on. So I have an example here of, in the company that I work for, we do vision inspection systems. So there's these cameras inside of a box that are mounted above a conveyor line where food and beverage containers are made. And I wanted to provide instructions of how to clean the mirrors inside of these camera boxes. And I got this, which was uh, from the manufacturer, and one of the engineers at my company gave this information to me. I was not about to put this into our manual because the people who are going to be reading it are just going to be freaking out. What the heck does this mean? So I'm not going to read this whole slide because it doesn't, it's very hard. So I'll just break it down piece by piece. So the first sentence talks about cleaning must begin with an assessment of the nature of the contaminant mitigated by the type of surface to be cleaned. Yeah, no kidding. I would say that would be a redundant piece of information. You look at it, you know it has to be cleaned. I'm just not even going to include it. And then the second sentence talked about a sequence of operations which may include all of the following, or optionally steps could be omitted if considered superfluous based on the initial assessment. Yeah, no kidding. Superfluous. These are types of words that we do not want to use in our technical communication because they're too wordy. It's just too many syllables, and our audience may or may not understand them. So how about on the right, cleaning the surface using the following methods? So we might reword it something like that. The next sentence had to do with dusting to remove particulate accumulation by means of compressed gas or wiping with a soft cloth or soft bristled brush. That is very difficult to say, not to mention difficult to read. So maybe for the people in our audience who may or may not have graduated from college, the people who are using these machines, they need to understand the sentences that we're writing. So maybe dusting the surface using a compressed gas, which they do have in their plants, or wiping with a soft cloth or soft brush. This was one of the best sentences. I thought when I read it, I made this face down here. What the heck does that even mean? Flushing with aromatic, aliphatic, or aqueous solvents to remove soluble adherents. That is quite the mouthful. I had to look up a dictionary. I had to look up a chemical dictionary. Not to mention the people who are in these plants probably don't have those dictionaries on hand. So how about rewording it to something that they can understand? Isopropyl alcohol or distilled water. They might understand that part, which is the translation of the original. And then another favorite, scouring with an aqueous slurry of precipitated chalk. They may sound good in theory, but what the heck does that mean? So when I looked up that in the dictionary and the chemical dictionary again, it was something like, toothpaste. It's an abrasive. So I would imagine that my audience would understand that a little bit better. And then one of the last sentences talks about a specific formula for deionized water, isopropanol, and 5 milli. This whole formula. They're probably not going to have these measuring cups with certain milliliters of water, and they're probably not going to take the time to measure out those items. So maybe a mild solution of the different chemicals to wash off this mirror that they were going to wash off. But what I actually used, and after talking with our engineers as well as our field service people who know the people in the plants who are using these pieces of equipment, finding out what they actually would have on hand and be able to understand. We're just talking about cleaning glass surfaces, blowing them off with canned compressed air, which they have, cleaning with a non-abrasive cloth dampened with lens cleaning solution, which they would have in the plant. And if the surface has compound in it, that's that sticky stuff that gets stuck to the glass, clean it with alcohol and then a lens cleaning solution. So that was our translation from the original into, I would say, plain English. And briefly, just working with the subject matter experts, in my experience, I have benefited from working with several subject matter experts who not only write up the information about the software they're writing about, or they have written theories of operation for me and things like that. They have provided lots of information, which I sometimes will take and put it into the manual, but sometimes I'll have to take out information that is not pertinent to the user, or maybe it's too proprietary that our company does not want to release this types of information. Sometimes I have to go in and ask them questions about what the process is, or how to use a piece of equipment, or how to use a piece of software or something like that. They may not have written up the information, but they'll spend the time with me interviewing them, and I'll ask them like a journalist, who, what, where, why, when, why would you use this? And when would you use this? And how would a user clean something, and so forth. So that's the best part of working with the subject matter experts. But there are some challenges. And after I write something up, it's very difficult many times to actually get them to review it. So they either don't want to spend the time, or they think it's too long or something like that. And that's where that topic-based writing for technical communicators comes in handy, because you can break down something. Instead of sending them a 600-page manual to review, you can send them 1 or 2 pages, and they like that a lot better. They'll actually review it at that point. But sometimes also some of the subject matter experts will come in and they'll try to explain something to me, and they're very very cerebral, and they'll talk to me in terms like we had a couple of slides ago, with words that, have me glazed over, and I'm trying to sit in the seat of the end user, trying to figure out what do they actually need to know, and how do they use it, and why would they use that. So I've had some people just talk at me with very heavily engineering language, and I'm sitting there and I just don't get it. I don't get it. And they'll have to explain it to me 5 times, and I'll have to play, I don't understand you. And it takes 6 or 7 iterations before we can actually understand what they're saying. So those are some of the challenges of working with subject matter experts. I also wanted to ask the audience if there's any particular challenges that you may have with working with subject matter experts.
I would say the biggest challenge is getting them to have time to focus on giving revisions or giving clarity on whatever we're trying to develop.
Okay. Yeah. Time is a definite consideration. I appreciate that.
I would say sometimes they don't take the reviews or our dependence on them seriously enough. So if we have content and we ask them to review it, they may go through it quickly, not carefully enough. And then after production, you find problems, and it's because, well, you didn't tell me that. So I think sometimes I run into them just not taking the whole process seriously enough so that we can have accurate information.
Not taking this seriously. Yeah, that's a very good point. I think sometimes it depends on who we're working with, but
Yes, I
Sure.
do. It's
yeah,
certainly.
if you're lucky to have somebody who understands the importance of what you're doing, that certainly helps.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to jump in, and I think sometimes when you're trying to write in simple, plain, clear language for a person who might be under stress, because sometimes with technical documentation, you're only going to crack that open when you're installing something new. So there's pressure to get that running, or it's broken, or there's a problem and you have to fix it, and the line is down, right? So there's stress. But sometimes the subject matter experts are really invested in their product, and you're calling their baby ugly maybe by saying, well, wait, we need to simplify this a bit, or have you considered reframing it this way? And they can get a little prickly about that because they might feel you're dumbing it down.
Yeah.
So how do you handle that?
And you're right. If they have written something up and it is sort of maybe not flowery, but very, very high level, and there's a lot of information in there, we do have to sit in the seat and advocate for the end users because they're the ones that are going to be using this information. If there are certain pieces of information that the subject matter expert absolutely wants someone to have, maybe you can funnel that to your internal people, like your field service and tech support people. Give them that information to have on hand. The trainers like that background information too, but the users, they either do not need, or maybe it's information that your company should not be revealing to your customers. There's in our business, there's proprietary information that we just don't want to give out. And a lot of times the engineers will be giving that to us and we have to say, sorry, this can't be included. So we have to give the information to the end users only what they need. And like you said, they're only going to look at it when something is wrong. They don't want to be reading 15 paragraphs to do a 2-step process, right? We have to keep it simple and keep them happy. And that way you're saving time and energy on your tech support people as well. So if you have it in a way that you can understand it, they're not going to call support. I wanted to transition to Dan, who was going to talk about usability.
Okay, we're going to be discussing usability tests next. All right. So one thing we talked about when, as Tricia mentioned, one thing we talked about when we were discussing how we would do this is she would talk about some things that would be useful to a UX designer from a technical communicator's point of view. And I'm here to do the exact opposite. I'm going to talk to some things that would be useful to a technical designer from UX point of view. Yeah, that's it. Okay. And so one thing, there's what I wanted to touch on today is there's a certification that's available through the STC. It's called the Certified Professional Technical Communicator certification. And the reason why this would interest you is that usability testing is actually covered as part of the exam. And usability testing is actually a broad area of UX. It's part of the under that user research, under the user experience umbrella I showed you earlier. It would fall under the user resource area, but it's also useful for technical writers too. And the text that I'm referencing for you is is this technical communication today. The one on the left is the 6th edition. The one on the right is the 7th edition. The content as far as usability tests go are the same for both. There's little variation. There's no variation at all between these two texts as far as usability is concerned. So the 7th edition will be used from March of this year going forward if you decide to test for the level 1 exam. But the content I'm about to present to you today should have no bearing on that. So what I'm going to be talking about today will be useful for you if you plan to take that exam in the near future. The other text I'm going to be referencing is a book from 2012 called Observing the User Experience. And this goes into usability testing in great detail, specifically in-person usability testing. And I also used the website maze.com to cover some of the remote aspects of remote usability testing, which has come into prominence recently as well. All right, so what is usability testing and why should we all do it? How would this be of value to you as a technical communicator? But what it is it's a usability test is a way to gauge how people perform specific tasks, guiding the definition and implementation of functionality. Okay, that comes from user experience book that I just showed you from 2012. However, a genius technical communicator simplified this and pointing out that it's defining usability tests as trying out your documents on real users. That's genius. So basically a technical communicator just did exactly what Tricia was describing by taking out all the extra stuff and just making it real simple. That's basically what it is. It's trying out your documents on real users, whether it's an in-paper document, manual, or a knowledge base article, to see how well they'll use it. How does it work? Are they able to accomplish the goals that they're setting out, that the document is intended for them to do? It's most effective in the early stages of development. Okay, so it's not really something, you can do it at the end, but it's not really something you want to use at the end of the product development. You want to do it more of like the beginning or the middle, while there's still time to make changes for the document. Any other changes that you make to the document or usability test, if you run it towards the end, then they would go out with the next version of that documentation. It is not a complete evaluation of the document or product. It's something that we want to keep very narrow and specific. You won't want to test the whole manual that you've written. You're just trying to test a few aspects of it, maybe say about 5 or so. And it's not, as I mentioned, it's not for final drafts. Is it qualitative or quantitative? It can be both. A quantitative usability exam will focus on things like the numbers, things like completion times. How long did it take to get something done? The error rates. How often did the errors? How many times did a user make a mistake? A participant make a mistake when trying to follow the instructions? Were they successful at it, and how often? Were they satisfied when they were doing? How so? Did they give it 4, 5, 3 stars? Things that can be quantified and then put into numbers. Qualitative, rather, on the other hand, a qualitative usability test will ask for the why, looks for the why. How did the user feel about when they're using the product or they're reading the manual? What did they think of it? What were their experiences like? And did they express things verbally? What did they express verbally or through body language or facial expressions? Those are the things you can't easily quantify, so those would be more qualitative results of the exam. There's also moderated or unmoderated exams. Moderated exam is basically they're good for qualitative insights, where you have to be there in person with the participant, watching their body language. You want to see their features, things that can't be quantified. On the other hand, and it can be conducted either locally or remotely, you'll probably get the most data locally in person versus remotely, where you can't really see them fidgeting with their fingers on screen. Unmoderated tests, on the other hand, are better for quantitative data, like follow-up questions. Follow-up questions just aren't as important. Then there's also the remote or local exams. Moderated tests, there's a typo. So local exams are best for the qualitative insights. They're conducted. There's less, scratch that last second part, but they're less flexible. They're more costly, and the moderator it's in a moderated control environment. So if you're conducting an exam at a lab or at your work site, you're basically in control of that environment. Whereas a remote exam is best for quantitative data. The person is not necessarily required, and it's basically conducted at the person's leisure. So they can be at home online in their own equipment with their own accessibility needs met, and they don't have to show up at site or anything like that. That makes it a lot less costly to do. And of course, and just the opposite, it's in a user-controlled environment. It's also accessible and it's scalable too. Whereas you're having a local site, you're pretty much limited to everybody in your own geographic region, unless you got buku bucks to fly someone in from wherever you want, from a city or a distant country. But with a remote exam, you can pretty much, it's scalable, and you can get as many people as you need for the exam from all across the globe. Usability tests include things like read them, and this is according to the technical communication manual. Read and locate tests. They ask, can they find it? Understandability tests. Can they understand it? Can they do it with a performance test? And I like this one. Is it safe? You can test safety features with it using these. In the technical communication manual, this is how they define usability tests. I'm not going to get into a big argument or jump into controversy here. This thing does mention a lot of things like focus groups, interviewing, surveying. These would be more under user testing instead of usability testing. Usability testing and all of these tend to fall under user testing, whereas usability testing is more along the lines of what I've described. So it's just something to keep an eye out for. Now, there are a couple of schools of thought as far as recruiting. How are we going to recruit our folks? Well, there are two schools of thought. This is actually school of thought number one. Okay, you can get a sampling of all product users. And doing that, you can include marginalized groups. And you keep an eye out for outliers. So basically, you're just kind of casting a wide net and bringing all of your potential users into and trying to get the data that you can. The other school of thought, however, is a bit more exclusive. You can be deliberate how you're choosing when you're choosing your participants or evaluators. You're going to choose the most representative groups of the target audience who will need the product or they've used the product recently. And from those groups, you're likely to get more accurate data because they have a vested interest in providing feedback to you. And these evaluators also can point out problems with the information architecture or the content-specific features, and are more motivated to make it work. So how many moderated participants do we need? The rule of thumb would be about 5. The more and this is more for an in-person moderated exam. The more evaluators they have, the more, when you have lots of evaluators and manner tasks, it means you're going to be spending a lot of money. So you've got deep pockets. If you have lots of them, then eventually you're going to get to the point of diminishing returns, where you're just finding people are encountering the same problems over and over again. If you have more moderators and too few tasks, you're going to have fewer of the severe problems are going to be found. You also want to schedule at least a couple extra for no-shows. So the rule of thumb is about 5. This would be about 5 participants. Try to schedule for about 6 to 10 total. We'll just make a quick case study real quick. So I made up a fictional company called Acme Boiler Systems, and we're just going to pretend this is a moderated in-person local usability test. Okay, we're going to try to, what we're looking for is when we try to recruit our audience to make sure that this manual that we've written for Acme Boiler Systems, we want to make sure it holds up in the field. So let's go, or our test audience would be, our target audience would be our residential HVAC technicians, probably 20 years older, preferably 25 to 30. Ohio Construction Industry License Board certified, so they're licensed. They're industry certified, preferably by Acme, but if we can't get that narrow, that's fine, just as long as they have some sort of industry certification. 1 year minimum installation and maintenance experience, and they're currently employed by an HVAC installer. Okay, after we've selected our audience, we'll go ahead and recruit them. There are recruiting agencies that will do that. And you may have to farm that out. You can prioritize and select tasks. Next thing you want to do is come up with a list of tasks that you want to test. The tasks that you would select typically include ones that are going to be used the most often, brand new, highly publicized, considered troublesome, they're dangerous, considered important, or considered important. If you can't, and the way you want to do this is you want to talk to the development team about which tasks are the ones that are the most priority as well. If you can't, if anyone if you get the development team together and everyone can't seem to agree on them, well, there's an exercise you can do to weed out the priorities. You list the most important ones, new or drastically changes features. Then you're going to have them rate each one according to importance, 1 through 5, 1 being the least important, 5 being the most. After that, you have them create another column called doubt and have them list each task 1 to 5, least to most important. Then you total the columns up, and the ones with the highest number are the ones that should have the highest priority. So here's what it would look like if in practice. So we'll say you've got 4 developers, and then you've also got three tasks. Instead of 5, we'll just say 3 for the State Department. Yasmin, Jay, Chloe, and Kareem, all across the top, they went ahead and they rated it. And when you tally the totals at the end, the bottom one was the one that people felt the least comfortable and most concerned about, or newest or high priority, and they were not comfortable with it. And that was, can they locate the safety precautions? So that would be the first one. So that would take the top of the list. After this, you form your tasks. And when you're forming tasks, you want to look for things that are reasonable. Can the tasks be done? Are they described? You want to describe them in terms of end goals. Okay, these are, for example, okay, Tom, you're installing this boiler system. You're installing a boiler system. You've dismantled the old unit, and you're ready to install the new unit here. Can you look through the manual and tell me what the first steps are that should take place? So you've given them an end goal to figure out asking them to find something in the manual. You want to be specific as well, and the task has to be doable. It should also take place in a realistic sequence. For example, if you're say you have for example, like a shopping website like Amazon, before you ask people to check out, you want to make sure that people have items in their cart, right? So it has to take place in a realistic sequence. It should also be domain neutral. Notice that in my persona, my case study of the ideal participant, we wanted people from about 1 year, minimum 1 year of training and in their early 20s. Because if we go for the journeymen who've been in the field and we give them certain tasks, then they're likely to have enough experience that they'll find their way around doing it in a different way than somebody who might have to rely on the manual to accomplish the task. The task should also be about reasonable in length, say about 10 minutes each. Next, you write the script. It's always good to start with an introduction, 5 to 7 minutes. Just introduce yourself. And here you introduce yourself, why you're here. Go ahead and with a preliminary interview as well. Just break the ice and ask them just some general questions to get them warmed up. So how long have you been in the industry? How long have you been installing boilers? Where'd you go to school? How many different models are you familiar with? And next, you'll give them the instructions. Takes about 3 minutes. Ask them hand them the manual, or they'll show them the website. Ask them what their first impressions are. And describe what they're seeing, if that makes sense to them. Get their feedback. And then you jump into the tasks. So you'll ask them, okay, I'd like you to show me how to drain water, the annual maintenance, the annual procedure of draining water on this boiler to flush it. Can you go ahead through the manual and see if you can describe how to do that for me? And as they're reading for the manuals, what you'll do is you'll probe questions as appropriate. And this is what's important for the qualitative part of the exam. Are they making facial expressions? Are they shaking their head? Are they having a puzzled look? Are they smiling? Are they laughing? And then you can say things like, I notice you're kind of, you look a little frustrated there, Tom. Tell me, what are you thinking right now? Just ask them questions about what they think and ask them to elaborate in real time while they're going through your manual. And then after that, you wrap it up. Next, and I'll just be very quick because we're short on time. Did the users complete all tasks? Okay, you're going to analyze the results. You've got all your data, and then you go through them and ask questions like, did they complete the tasks? Where did they struggle? Did the changes made since the last cycle help or hurt? What needs more testing? Also, reflecting back to our developers and their input, were their concerns valid? Did users have a problem? Did the users' difficulties align with those that the developers predicted, with their developers' concerns? So you analyze the results, and then you take that to your development team, and then they take that feedback, and then they can go through the next reiteration of that product. Okay, and real quick, you're setting up a moderated lat if you're doing this in person. Just a couple quick points. You should also match the user to the environment. So if you're going to be having them read a boiler manual and so forth, my ideal place might be in a basement of a building or a house. You can record the video participant as well, and then you limit the test to you and the user only, instead of having a whole panel of guys with clipboards, people with clipboards writing down their answers. That's intimidating, and then I guess the point where you're asking them to speak becomes like an exercise in public speaking, which not everybody's interested in doing. And from that, I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Tricia, who will take it from here.
Great, thanks, Dan. Well, just for our audience's benefit, in wrapping things up this evening, as you can see, technical communicators and UX professionals have a lot of overlapping interests and a lot of overlapping skills. People who work in UX and come up with usability testing and so forth, like people where like me, who don't have the skills or the opportunities to come up with the usability testing, can benefit from folks who work in the UX profession. And there was a brief discussion that we had last evening. I was talking with Melanie and Dan about how can technical communicators help UX professionals. And Melanie had mentioned the personas that the UX professionals benefit from. The people who, like Dan was talking about, the person who is the HVAC technician. Keep that person in mind when you are writing your documentation or your website or so forth, making sure that everything that you're doing and putting into your technical documentation is appropriate for the specific audience member. There was one slide that I was going to show that had a few resources on there. We can share the presentation with you in the recording through email. We'll send that off to you tomorrow, but the resources, second, I gotta find my page here. There it is. Whoops. Dan's got that. So there are a few resources that are available that we want to make you aware of. And of course, our organizations, we have the UX Akron, where the user experience people gather. And we have ohiostc.org, which is this chapter, the Ohio chapter for the Society for Technical Communication. That PDF in the third bullet is the PDF that I referenced earlier today, where it talks about the overlapping skills and the benefits between UX professionals and technical communicators. It's several pages long. I want to say it's 16, 18 pages or something like that. This is a URL to that PDF. It's very interesting to look at. The fourth bullet is the link to the technical communication page that I showed earlier, talking about what technical communication is. And then, of course, Society for Technical Communication is stc.org. But at this point, I want to ask our audience, what questions do you have? Oh, thank you, Melanie. Yeah, the book by Jenny Reddish, that is definitely recommended.
It's an older book, guys, but very timely. I read it like once a year, seriously, and it's still very timely. Everything in there is just great advice. So
Hello, I am Ashley. I'm new here. I am actually in school right now. I'm about to graduate this semester. It's interesting to be involved in this meeting. I actually got this meeting link from my professor, one of my professors. So I'm actually doing this meeting for college credit, but but I'm here. But I just want to say that it's my degree is technical communication. But one of our actual classes is usability testing. So it's interesting to see that Dan like put in an actual presentation of what usability testing is and the things that he has said and things that my professor has said they overlap. And it's cool to get that experience where it wasn't elective for me, but I figure it may have been something that I may need as a technical communicator. And it's it was interesting to be in a class with other people who they needed that class for their degree who were in UX. And we're like collaborating together on these projects and me writing the stuff and them doing the actual testing. So it's interesting that it is actually practiced in the real world and it wasn't just a random class.
That's that's good to hear. And I'll be honest, I'm a department of one and I really don't have the resources to do usability testing like Dan is talking about. So my usability testing is typically I give it to our training department who uses the information during their training and provide me feedback after that. But it's not formal like that. You know, I wish that I had the setup like Dan was talking about. Thank you, Ashley. We appreciate the comments and appreciate you being here. And I hope that you join us for any other event in the near future.
Thank you. I plan on signing up and I plan on hopefully going to future events as well, like in person also.
Fabulous. Look forward to
What are you
seeing
looking
you.
to do with your degree, Ashley?
Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question about usability testing. So I'm in the software world, and engineering's mantra is we need to ship it yesterday, right? So when you're in that situation where they want to get stuff in the customer's hands as quickly as possible, how do you do usability testing when there's no time? On anything. I'm not even talking about the documentation. I guess I'm talking about how do you test the product?
I would say from my lived experience on this. So there's no time to test. You'll often hear that as the mantra or a phrase from, anyone on the team all the way up to senior management. We don't have time to test. Well, you need to
Great. So
build
then the customer does your testing for
that.
you.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
basically end up doing live testing on your audience, which can have very damaging consequences, particularly with product safety. So, think about that. If you can do agile planning, waterfall planning, whichever platform you want to use for that, you can certainly build in some cycles for testing, review, and iteration. And you can do what's called quick and dirty testing, where could your mom understand it? Get 5 moms together and see if they can sort through some of that documentation, because it's really you want to introduce a quality product. I understand the need for a minimum viable product or MVP, but you still need to ensure that it's a decent experience for your audience, because the cost to your brand, to your profit margins can be just high if you launch something that just wasn't quite ready and had issues that could have been discovered with just some simple user testing.
Yeah, we had a software test engineer, so he would, try to break the software and try everything out, and he'd write up the bugs and so forth and give that back to software. So at least we had somebody looking at the software before it was released. Didn't necessarily catch everything in the world, but this was something.
Also, don't forget a lot of the tools that are out there like Maze. Maze.com, for instance, they have a lot of AI tools in their suite that will automate a lot of the tedium involved in user testing, like trying to recruit users, analyzing the data, things along those lines. So if you can use some of those to your advantage, or at least you can get like questions, things that need testing based on what the development team says or what customer support team says. Yeah, that might be an inroad rather than having to go through it old school, if that makes sense.
Nice. Well, for the benefit of the recording and for the audience, we want to respect your time, but I would like to thank everyone for attending this evening. We hope that you learned a lot, got a lot out of it, and keep the conversation going. If you think of something that you wanted to ask or you wanted to add and didn't get to in today's meeting, please reach out to either of our organizations. We shall certainly be open and willing. It's been a pleasure collaborating with UX Akron and STC. It's great to have all of us get together and have a common goal. We're trying to make things great for the end users, and we have a lot of overlapping skills, but we can also help one another perform our duties. But with that, I'm going to end the recording. Thank you for attending.
Thank you both, Dan and